Okay, so the problem that we have now is we have an animation. However, because it's random with the wind, even though the animation is looping, the actual physics of the cloth are not. Okay, so you can definitely see that pop at the end there. So what we need to do is we need to make it so that this frame matches this frame, or it fluidly forms into the first frame. All right, from that. Now we can look back here and we see frame 20, and if we look, frame 20 is very close to frame 1, but you still have a little bit of a pop there. Okay, so it's not going to be perfect. So let's go back to 130 frames. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this frame 20 and we're going to morph it into frame 0 using the morph modifier. Okay, simple enough. So let's see. So we're going to lose frames. Let's say I want to find something close to this frame. So let's see. I think we could start it at frame 120 or 115. And remember, we want to also blend the timing of the floppiness of the wind in the same amount of frames so that it doesn't look jerky. So let's go ahead and we're going to take frame 20. Now to do this, what we need to do is we need to take a state of its physical attributes and make a clone of the actual object as an instance. And what an instance means is that it's going to take all the same properties that that object has within it and clone that with all the properties. A copy would just be the mesh, and what we would lose is all of our simulation, our turbo smooth, and everything we'd applied to it. We'd lose that if we made a copy. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an instance clone, and we're going to call this, we're taking this from frame 120, so we're going to call this sock frame 120. Okay, now as you can see, it's created a duplicate right over the top of each other. All the vertices and everything line up. Okay, so for right now, what we're going to do is take all of this information we have, and I'm going to delete the turbo smooth off of this for now temporarily. And we don't, oops, pardon. And we don't need to make this into a, cloth object anymore. It's just a regular mesh object now. Or not yet, but we're going to turn it into that so that we could apply the morph modifier to the mesh object and shape it into the first frame. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to select turbo smooth here and take that modifier off. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the word cloth in the modifier stack here, bring up our properties dialog and collapse all. And now you can see that it's gone from a cloth object to an edible mesh. Okay, so as an edible mesh object, let's go ahead and hide everything else in the scene for now. So I'm going to hide my ring apparatus here. I'm going to hide the rings, and I'm going to hide the rod. Right, and I still have two objects here. I have sock frame 120, as you can see, selected, and I have regular sock. Now regular sock I'm going to hide, and also I want the regular sock is purple. Let's go ahead and make this base mesh yellow so we can tell the difference. Alright, so now you can see that has yellow line there. Alright, now let's go ahead and we're going to hide that and unhide sock. Now the sock still has all the physics simulation math in it. So we're going to go to frame 0 now, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to right click on it at frame 0, clone, make an instance, and we're going to call this sock frame 0. Okay, and then do the same thing and collapse that stack. Alright, so now we have sock frame 0 as a mesh. Alright, as you can see, it follows the animation, but it doesn't follow the simulation. Okay, so now we're going to take that frame 0 and we'll color that a different color. Let's say fluorescent green there. Okay, and we're going to hide sock again. Okay, and this time we're going to unhide sock frame 120. Okay, now you can see that's the form that it leaves at 120. That's the simulated form that it stops at 120, and we need to morph it back into frame 0, which is the green one. So now I'm going to select the yellow sock, sock frame 20, and I'm going to apply the morpher modifier to it. And what the morpher modifier does is it lets you take several different shapes that have the same vertex values and morph them over time into those shapes. It allows you to have several channels, 100 different shapes you can use. This is used, it's called morph targeting in 3D Studio Max, or blend shaping in Maya if you're a Maya user. But it's the same principle. It's used for facial expressions a lot, or talking. But it's very useful in getting something that's been animated with physics or dynamics to get into a looping cycle, which is very useful in video games, or what we do here at Bally. So what we're going to do is we're going to take frame 01, apply the morpher modifier to it, and then we're going to select in this very first channel here, I'm going to right click on it and then left click on this box that says pick from scene, and we're going to select frame 0. So now you can see if I dial this spinner, what's going to happen is it's going to morph from that frame to frame 0 and blend between those two objects. So now what I can do is over that time from 120 to 130, I'll turn my animation key on, auto key, and I'm going to set a key at frame 120 at 0, and then at frame 30 we're going to morph that object into there. Okay, so now we can take the original object to make sure that animate is off. I'm going to take sock 0, we'll hide that. Alright, so now you can see it follows, and then at frame 120 it morphs into there, and that's going to be our loop. Now the question you may have is that it remains rigid up until that point, and then if we have our regular sock, you know, that's gonna move in the wind, and then all of a sudden it's not going to operate properly. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need to make a couple changes. Okay, at this point I'm going to hide sock frame 0, okay, so that we only have our simulated sock and then the sock 120 that we morph at the end. Okay, as you can see though, at frame 120 they both line up perfectly, alright, which is exactly what we want. So what we need to do is we need to go into our property values, and we're going to do what's called a visibility track. And what this means is that the sock 120 is going to become visible at frame 120, and until then, up until frame 119, it's going to be invisible and not render. And then the simulated sock is going to be visible up till frame 119 and then become invisible at frame 20. So they're going to switch visibilities, and even though you won't see this during the rendering process, that's what's going to happen. That way it actually replaces the object at the time we needed it to at that frame, and that's how we get a looping, cycling, physics-based animation. So let's go ahead and go to our visibility tracks. We're going to go to frame 0, and I'm going to take the cloth sock, and we're going to go to Object Properties, right click on my 4 window pane panel, Object Properties, and then you'll see here Rendering Control Visibility at the top. We're going to do this on an object basis. Okay, and let's cancel this for a second. Let me turn on Auto Key first, make sure that we animate what we're doing, and we're going to set our visibility to 1. Okay, if you don't want to type in 1, you can just click the spinner down 1 and then up 1. Make sure it says 1 here. And then we're going to click OK. Next, we're going to move the modifier to frame 119. And again, right-click on it, go to Object Properties. And now we're going to create another key with a visibility of 1 and click OK. And next, we're going to right-click again, make it visibility 0, click OK, and you'll see the key here, okay, that appears. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back to frame 119 and do it one more time and make it 1 again. So now you can see as it moves, you can see it throwing in the breeze, and then at frame 20 it disappears, okay, and it's no longer there. It is gone. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is we have our other object, our morph object, and we want to do the same thing with this. So what we're going to do is at frame 120, we're going to right click on it, Object Properties, and this is going to be visible at frame 120. And then previous to frame 120, we're going to right click on it and we'll make it invisible. Okay, so now you can see, let me turn off edge surfaces here. Alright. Oh, see, the problem we're having is it's fading away over time. That's because if we look into Object Properties, you can see the rendering control is not the same. So we need to lock that down. So I'm going to go back to frame 0 and make sure that this is 1. And then at frame 19, I also want to make sure that that is also at 1. And then disappears at frame 120. Okay, so we have that, and then it disappears. And we'll do the same to the other. Only here we want it invisible, and then visible. I wonder why it's doing that. Okay, so now we have those objects, and one is visible, and then at that frame it disappears, and the next one takes over and morphs into the original, so that now what we can do is just assign our render. We'll go into a perspective view, and we're going to make this into a square render. I have it at 800 by 800. Set our active time segment. And then I'm going to save it as a PNG. Right click on the word perspective here, show our save frames, and then we can just line that up to whatever we want. Make sure that it's always in scene. And there we have our windsock. And you can place this any way you want. And render it out.